Hi everyone, it's Caitlin. So in today's video, I'm just going to be sharing my tarot reading journey. I will have been reading tarot for 6 years in October, so very close. But I just thought I'd take it all the way back to 2019 up until present moment. And so it's probably going to be like over 20 minutes, so you might want to get comfortable or grab a snack. But yeah, so my tarot reading journey pretty much started in 2019. And actually before that, I just want to share if I knew about tarot or anything like that. I'm wondering now if it was soul memories, but I'm pretty sure I maybe heard of tarot like one time before I became interested in it. Like I feel like I just generally knew what it was, but I kind of don't even really know how. Again, I kind of feel like it was a soul memory. I don't remember ever seeing like any actual cards or anything like that up until I started coming across, content, or I started getting into my spiritual journey. So yeah, I don't really have much recollection of tarot, but I just feel like I had a general knowledge of what it was somehow. So my journey pretty much started back in the summer of 2019. In August, that's when I had my spiritual awakening. And then I would say between August and September, that's when I met the person that I believed at the time to be my twin flame. All of it I feel like plays a part basically. But I think before I met him, I don't really remember searching up spiritual videos or anything like that, but I do remember watching spiritual videos. I remember coming across like Ralph Smart or Infinite Waters. I don't know exactly what his channel name is now. I remember coming across like Aaron. I don't know how to say his last name, but it starts with a D. I feel like he's pretty big, on in this YouTube spiritual realm. I don't know. And then also I came across, I would say, one of his friends. I know they do business together, Victor Odo. I feel like he's also pretty prominent. I remember coming across videos from these guys and other people. Again, I don't know how I came across these spiritual topics, but I honestly attribute it to the algorithm. Like, I'm not against the algorithm in that sense. I feel like with whatever I was searching on Google and YouTube, and just with my spiritual awakening, I just kind of feel like the universe, it was like a divinely guided kind of thing, basically. So yeah, I ended up coming across spiritual videos. I did not come across tarot readings at the time, but eventually, like I was saying, I came across the person I believed to be my twin flame. And basically, I remember I did not know what twin flames were when I started researching into what was happening between me and this person. If you've gone through the whole twin flame thing, you know that it's kind of confusing. You just want answers. So I was just I was Googling, trying to figure out what was happening pretty much. And I feel like with my awakening, with what I was researching as far as just spirituality in general, and then adding on the whole twin flame dynamic, or what I was searching up as far as trying to figure out what this connection was, it pretty much led me to, of course, figure out what twin flames were, but then also it led me to eventually come across, the twin flame readings on YouTube. And pretty much when I feel like this all happened in like August, September, October. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but yeah, I ended up coming across twin flame readings, and I just thought it was so interesting how, based off your zodiac sign, that the readings could be so accurate or just resonate so much. And I remember coming across like Bridget, I think her name is Bridget Rao, and Liv Tarot. There might have been some other people, but I remember watching their readings specifically, just I guess just curious pretty much. And I think it obviously was those videos that, guided me or made me become interested in, grabbing a deck for myself. I don't remember the exact like events because I wasn't journaling at the time. And of course, it's been like 6 years now. And I was really kind of going through a lot back then too. But yeah, eventually I came across, twin flame readings, and I feel like that's really where the interest came from. And so basically in October, that's when I started moving towards getting my own deck. Somewhere, I guess, I was researching about tarot, and I remember coming across, I guess, an article or some sort of website basically that said you could use a bicycle deck. And looking back now, I just kind of feel like that was very impulsive, but I am impulsive. And it also I feel like now just kind of didn't make sense. But, I am a very curious person. I'm open to exploring my curiosity. So when I figured out that you could do that and you could pretty much just go to the store, because Walmart has bicycle decks, and I have it over there. I meant to grab it. Actually, hold on. So yeah, with knowing that you could pretty much just go, pick up a bicycle deck at Walmart, that's exactly what I did. This is actually the first deck that I ever bought. I don't remember the price or anything like that, but I pretty much was like, let me take it out. I don't know if you can like see it from here, but yeah, I remember coming across that you could, or learning you could use bicycle decks to like in a similar manner, basically. So that's why I went out and got this deck to at least, try it out, or these decks. But when I ended up, exploring into it, it just wasn't working out for me. It just wasn't the same pretty much. But, at least I just kind of, saw it through. And so after I just kind of was like, this is not it, I remember just, I guess, researching some more, and then somehow I ended up coming across my first deck, which again, I forgot to grab. So yeah, so then I was doing some Googling, and somehow I ended up coming across my first deck. I don't know how I came across it, but I ended up coming across it, and I just thought it was perfect. I just thought I had to have it because it was my favorite color, and my favorite color, which is black, and it had gold detailing. And this is the deck right here. It's called the Golden Thread Tarot. The website is actually very informative. I'll try to remember to put it in the description box. But yeah, it was my favorite color. It had gold detailing. I feel like the images were pretty basic and simple to understand. So it was at that point, that was like the end of October. I just decided to get it for myself for my birthday. And at the same time, I don't really remember the exact date. I thought that I had started my page like more so towards the end of October, but when I went back at some point to look through my photos, I ended up seeing that I think I actually started earlier in October, like definitely after the 15th, but I don't remember the exact date. So at the same time I was buying my first tarot deck, I started Twin Flame Scorpio. And just to kind of, just to sidetrack a little bit, how I came up with the name Twin Flame Scorpio is just, I just honestly didn't think much of it. And I just put Twin Flame and Scorpio together because at the time I was researching a lot of Twin Flame content. I am actually a Scorpio. I love the zodiac. I love my zodiac signs. I love my placements. So I just put Twin Flame Scorpio together because I did not plan on being face forward. I planned on being anonymous, and pretty much, pretty quickly I understood like that's not the direction that my guides wanted me to go in. I understood pretty quickly like, hey, actually you are gonna be showing yourself. So but yeah, I started the page because I wanted to be anonymous. I just threw the name together. Really, I just planned on sharing my twin flame journey because, of course, me and this person were eventually going to end up together, right? But yeah, that's the whole reason that I started. I never planned on reading tarot or anything like that. I just honestly, again, pretty much decided to explore my curiosity, see it through. So yeah, again, at the same time I was buying my first tarot deck, I started my Instagram, did not plan on, showing my face or anything like that. Really just wanted to share my twin flame journey. So that all happened in October. And then sometime in November, I realized I realized that I could channel with the cards pretty much. I remember being downstairs one day, and I was just like, let me see if I could read for, different signs. Again, looking back now, it's just kind of like, well, duh, Caitlin. But I don't think that I was really into tarot that deeply, as far as, like, if other people are reading signs, well, then obviously I could do it. I was just a beginner, didn't know any better, and very curious. So yeah, I remember being downstairs, playing with my cards, and I'm just like, let me see if I could read for different signs. I think I did about 4 to 6 different signs, and after that little session, I noticed that my energy had shifted. I noticed that I was getting warm. I noticed that I was a bit hungry. And again, I just felt a little bit different. And it was from that moment that I knew that, oh my God, I channeled something. And I'm pretty sure that I had to have been doing it before, but I don't think that I had spent that, like however long I was doing those sign readings for, that was like the first time that I had spent like, I won't say a significant amount of time, but that was the first time that I actually had like a little significant session, I guess, a significant session, or a significant enough session to realize that my energy was shifting or actually doing something. So I just left that feeling like, I don't know, I left that being like, oh, like in awe, basically. That's how I felt after that moment. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I just did that. And I think that if you take the time to go back down through my Instagram, I actually posted about that. When I first started my Instagram, again, I really planned on sharing my twin flame journey. I was also just kind of sharing my spiritual journey, and I think I was sharing like the decks I was buying, just very open, creative, like the Fool card basically, just going whichever way the wind blew, pretty much. Very carefree, I feel like, when I first started my page. Um, but yeah, I had that little channeling experience, which just I don't know why I can't think of the word, or why I can't like formulate words around it. I was just, like I said, in awe of that experience. And it was from that experience that also just kind of helped me formulate a content plan, which I think we'll come back to in a little bit here. So, yeah, November, that's when I had my first channeling experience. And I feel like it also had to have been November that I was curious about reading for other people. And again, I had what Twin Flame Scorpio has turned into now. I never planned for any of this. I just went step by step, followed my intuition. So in November, I feel like I was very curious about reading for other people. So I'm just like, okay, let me try this out. And that's when I started offering free readings through my DMs. I think I remember just obviously posting in my story. I think I might have had it in my bio. And so yeah, I was taking readings that way. Right off the bat, the feedback was great. I remember distinctly a few people telling me like, you're really good for a beginner. Like, even though you're a beginner, you should be charging like hundreds of dollars for these readings. And eventually I would get there, but it just took time for me to because I needed to build up my confidence pretty much. But yeah, I started offering free readings in November. And then I don't think that I was really posting too many readings yet. Still posting about my twin flame journey, I feel like. And then we get to December. And in December, I feel like that's when things kind of started to get out of control with the free readings, because of course everybody loves like free readings. And then I feel like it's a big thing in the spiritual and with tarot reading too. I'm not really sure how I want to say that. People just love free readings basically, and it was getting overwhelming because at the same time I was offering these free readings, I was still working my job at the time. I was working full time. I had just left my, long-term relationship. I had 3 kids. I had just come out of having 2 kids back to back. My youngest child at the time was, had just turned 1. I moved back in with my mom. It was just a lot going on. And at the same time too, like I said, I had my spiritual awakening. So the fact that I was even in that job that was no longer aligned, I was having tower moments pretty much every month to get me out of there, because of course at this point I understand the energy mismatch was just too great, and those tower moments were helping me to shift, but it would take me I feel like I had finally came to that realization in December that I couldn't stay there much longer, because I was getting annoyed with my bosses micromanaging me pretty much. But yeah, in December I started to get overwhelmed with the readings and just everything that I had been through. I feel like towards the end of December, that's when I was just like, okay, I gotta leave. I gotta let go of my job. It's funny because in October, November, I knew that I was being shifted, but I was like, please do not intervene. Like, please let me just stay here. Because I remember being at work one day in the office, and I was just like, it'd be so cool if I could do this, like read full time. And I'm clairaudient. I feel like clairaudient is one of my strongest gifts. I just remember hearing, you can. And at that moment, I'm like, oh no, because again, when I heard that, I'm just kind of like, oh, please. I already knew at this point, like, they could move you, they could, like I said, move you pretty much. But I'm just like, I did not want to be forced out of there pretty much. And of course, now I understand things differently again. But yeah, I was like, please don't please don't intervene. But clearly they were already intervening. And then again, going back to December, I was getting overwhelmed again. That's when I was just like, I can't stay here anymore. There was something that happened at work, pretty much just a micromanaging situation. I got very upset, and it was clear to me that I needed a break. I needed, to get myself right emotionally, mentally, things like that. So I think December was when I decided to leave my job, but I did not communicate that until January. But then, kind of getting back on the tarot subject, I also decided that starting in the new year, like January 2020, that's when I would have to start charging for readings, because, at that point it just made sense. I had to establish some sort of order pretty much. So that pretty much takes us all the way through 2019. And so next will be 2020. Okay, so starting in 2020, like I said, January 1st, that's when I started charging for readings. I'm pretty sure that I started off with like $10, and then I gradually increased it. I don't remember the increases between 10 and 45. 45 is what I had it at when I first started my website. And I mean, I want to say that I probably went up like $5. I feel like I can remember 25, but again, I don't know for sure. I remember for sure starting my website, I feel like at 45. But yeah, in January, I started charging. Of course, things kind of slowed down a little bit because, you know, I guess when you just start, you know, charging and then raising your prices, eventually you kind of, I don't know what the exact terminology is, but I definitely learned about it as I've gone on my journey. It's just people, you start phasing people out when you start raising your prices. It's kind of like, you know, people, you are no longer in alignment with certain people, and they just kind of drop off pretty much. So yeah, I started charging in January. January is also when I communicated to my bosses that I was in February, that was going to be it. I had to go, and they understood. I think we all knew that the time was coming, but I feel like with how everything happened, I definitely was not expecting that. But I feel like I've learned that about my path pretty much. A lot of what has happened for me since I have awakened has been totally unexpected. So yeah, I communicated with them that like February would be, I think it might have been February. It was like the first or second week of February. That would be like my last week. But I did not even make it to that. If you follow me from Instagram, you might remember me talking about this. But something again happened in January. Another significant tower moment happened to where I could not even finish my 2 weeks. I guess when it happened, it was kind of right in the 3 to 2 weeks I had left. But what happened just really disturbed me to the point that I told him, like, you know, I can't even finish my 2 weeks. This is gonna be my last week, and that's it. And I guess I'm not really going to get into that. It's just, again, something happened. I was misaligned with the job. It's clear now. And I decided, you know, I had to go. Ideally, I would have liked to have waited until I got my tax refund in like typically March, but I couldn't even wait that long. It was clear, like, again, something was happening at least once a month. And so it was clear in January after that moment, well, really in December, it was just clear that I needed to go. So I just, you know, took a leap of faith, basically. And then I feel like everything happened again at the right time though too, because it's like, even if I would have chosen to stay, like, I still would have went through the same thing. So like when I decided to leave my job, I left my job like right before the pandemic started, which I feel like is crazy looking back. But yeah, I started right before the pandemic started. So I feel like basically with that leap of faith, it's just like I just had to trust that everything would be okay. You know, I had to trust that I would make it financially through this time. And it's like, even if I chose to stay there, I still would have had to go through the same thing because everything ended up shutting down. So I still would not have had any income other than what I was making from my readings at that point. So I guess it's just a case of divine timing pretty much. So yeah, I left my job in February. I was still doing the readings. And I feel like during this time, I was also working on my website for some reason. I feel like, obviously, I guess looking back, I had to have been working on the website just to kind of establish more structure and to stop, you know, taking orders or bookings through my DMs. But I can't, again, remember the exact train of thought I had. I just started working on the website. But actually kind of backtracking a little bit more. In January, that's when I really kind of started treating my page, I would say, like a magazine. So like I was saying, so back in November of 2019, when I realized that I could get messages for different signs, I pretty much took that and realized that I could pretty much create content every day. Pretty much I could do like 2 readings, a general and a love reading for each sign, and then I could do a general and a love reading for divine feminine, divine masculine, and that would pretty much give me like pretty much a whole month of content to post every month. And so I decided to take that plan, and I believe I really started being consistent with that in January. I don't remember if I was like posting once a day, but I just know that I was consistent, and I liked that. I liked that idea because, again, it would allow me to post every day, and pretty much at that point I knew that if you posted every day, that could lead to growth. And then eventually I learned that if you post several times a day, that could lead to even more growth. And of course, I've since learned like you don't want to do that. We'll get into that either later or in different videos. But yeah, I started I remember telling myself that I'm just going to treat my page like a magazine. I'm going to be posting different, a reading for each sign every single day, and then a reading for divine feminine, divine masculine, that kind of thing. So yeah, I was at the same time, I guess winter 2020, late winter, that's when I was posting consistently on my page. I was working on my website. And then at the same time, I got my tax refund. We were also getting stimulus checks at this time. And eventually during this time, I kept hearing website. I just heard website. And then I already intuitively knew that that meant I needed to finish up my website and make it live. And I think I heard that obviously because I was being guided. It was a divine timing type of thing. But I'm somebody that I will start things and stop things. So I kept hearing website, I guess, as to nudge me to finish it and again to make it live so that I could start taking bookings through my website. So I finished it up, and then I made my website live in, I think it was the last week of May, early June of 2020. And like I was saying earlier, I did start off, I think, with like $45 readings. And pretty much that was, when I went over to my website, I just kind of feel like things kind of took off for a little bit. The turnouts or the bookings that I was getting was honestly unexpected, but I feel like the demand showed me that I unintentionally marketed myself well. I built up a hype around my readings, but I also feel like they were priced appropriately to get the bookings that I was getting. So I would say for that first year, bookings did really well. I was making a decent amount of money. I was happy with it. But I think the biggest thing about looking back at that time is like I was still in hustle mode. I was still just kind of doing too much. I still didn't have my priorities right. But that's basically just to kind of tell the story. That's what was happening at that time. I was getting a lot of bookings. The universe was trying to tell me like, hey, slow down, like go with the flow, things like that. And I was doing my best at the time. But yeah, I was still in hustle mode. But again, bookings were great. And yeah, bookings were great. And then basically because I was, doing a lot, because again, at the same time, I was posting on Instagram a lot and consistently. I think basically when I hit September, that's when I had like my first little burnout situation. And I did take a break, but it really wasn't, substantial enough. But basically as I would continue to go on my journey, I would eventually learn, to take longer breaks and then just to take breaks whenever I feel like, you don't always have to schedule a break. If you just wake up one day and feel like you don't want to do something, you don't have to do it. But it would take me time to really get there, because really what happened was, like I had mentioned, I ended up moving back in with my mom. And when you're in hustle mode and when you're in that wounded masculine, you pretty much just have your eyes set on the next goal. So it's like when I started my website and the bookings were great, I'm just like, oh, this is great. I can use this, and if I keep this up, then I can eventually move out. But of course, I realized at some point that was not sustainable. Like in hindsight, I'm glad that I learned that reading should only be like one part of your income. You should not. I mean, it depends on your goals, it depends on your energy, but I have learned for myself that readings cannot be the way that I make a full-time income. So that's just for me personally. So yeah, in September I had my first burnout situation. I feel like I took a little bit of a break, but it would still take time for me to learn how to take the appropriate amount of rest, I guess we'll just say. So yeah, I continued reading, and I'm trying to remember if anything else happened in 2020. I feel like that's pretty much it. I feel like I covered everything significant. I was posting on Instagram. I was posting, twin flame content, zodiac content, but I was also posting like what I was learning spiritually. I was posting what I was learning spiritually, and I think that's pretty much it. So that completes everything for 2020. So now we're going to move to 2021. And 2021 was pretty similar to 2020. I was still posting on Instagram. I was growing on Instagram. As far as what I was posting, twin flame content, divine masculine, divine feminine readings, zodiac readings, but I was also posting like other types of readings, I feel like. And then I was also posting, educational content. Like I remember posting about masculine, feminine energy, mind, body, spirit, things like that, which I feel like was also helping me to grow, because people at that time were hungry. I feel like, or liked learning, liked knowledge. I think I was also posting like oracle messages. And then I would say summertime is when the bookings kind of dropped, but they dropped to another steady amount. So even though they dropped throughout the rest of the year, I was still making like basically an average of the same average per month, if that makes sense, financially, whatever. And then it would be summertime. I'm not even sure when I created my first deck. I think I created Yang Messages in 2020. Those are my first ideas, just decks for physical products. But in the summer, late summer, it had to be around Lionsgate again, because I feel like that's when I tend to get a lot of significant downloads for my journey. It was late summer 2021 where I had an explosion of ideas as far as physical products that I could offer. I think I might have done like my bracelets before 2021 too. I can't really remember. I didn't really want to go back through my photos at this point, but what I remember specifically was like the late summer. That's when I had the explosion of ideas for physical products, specifically intention oils, candles. And again, I feel like my jewelry was actually first, but I can't remember, but jewelry was included in that. And then I believe I created my first oils in 2021, 2022, and they actually have turned out to be unexpectedly successful. Like, I'm also somebody, again, who's impulsive. I will do things, I don't really have many expectations. And so when I released them, I wasn't expecting anything, but like I was saying, they have been unexpectedly successful, and then I'm still creating them to this day. But yeah, I think that's it as far as 2021. Bookings kind of dropped, but we're still steady. And then I had the idea for physical products. Oh, that's another thing that happened in 2021. That's when I started kind of regressing, I noticed. I think really what was happening though was just that I was getting ready to elevate, and instead of going with the flow and continuing to elevate, I was uncomfortable and kind of went backwards. And I'm not really sure if I can explain that deeper. Sometimes I do feel like there was something collectively that was happening that kind of made me kind of retract and withdraw. But either way, I try not to really think about that too much. I just know, looking back now that I started regressing, I just kind of felt uncomfortable with the energy. But I think, again, what was happening was just that I was starting to expand, but instead of going with it, I just started feeling comfortable, and again, I withdrew. And I feel like things started to shift on social media around that time, maybe. Sorry, I kind of got scared. The air just came on. Hopefully it's not too loud. But I think things started to shift with social media around that time too, and things just kind of felt weird. So I just again withdrew. So that takes us through 2021, and now we're going to move into 2022. So in 2022, I feel like that's when the regression really kind of started to take shape, if that makes sense. Like, I don't want to say 2022 was like a dark year, but I feel like 2022 was kind of when I started losing direction. I started to feel like more disconnected, if that makes sense. Something I don't want to forget also is I started receiving Instagram bonuses. That was like the first time I guess I had the opportunity to get paid from social media, so to speak. So yeah, I was able to partake in Instagram bonuses for that year. I think it went all the way up until like 2023. They took it away, and then it came back in like 2024, and I'm still a part of the program. And I don't know the qualifications for that. I was just able to partake in that opportunity pretty much. But yeah, in 2022, that's when the regression really started to take shape. That's when I started to feel like, disconnected. Somehow I feel like twin flame content and love, started to overshadow everything else. And that I started to get like fed up with that, but I really couldn't put it into words yet. I still just kind of kept going with the flow. I also feel like, or just kind of kept moving forward, instead of like, it's like I could have taken a break to kind of figure things out, but at the same time, I didn't really feel like I needed to. Sometimes you just have to keep moving forward. And as you keep moving forward, eventually you figure things out. I didn't really feel like I needed to take a break at that point in time to figure that out, because eventually I did figure it out. But I feel like 2022 is also when I started to be like not as consistent on Instagram. Like, people told me that I was overall consistent, but 2022 I feel like is when I first started like, posting, then I would disappear for a bit. Start posting again, then I would disappear for a bit. And then also I started having problems with Instagram. Like, people don't believe in shadow bans, but you definitely can get shadow banned. And I was definitely shadow banned in 2022. And I feel like that's when my page kind of stopped growing as much. And I remember specifically I think I posted like 2 posts back to back, and Instagram told me like I could not post for like 3 days because I was like spamming or whatever. Just very weird, again, with whatever they were doing on social media. Because I mean, I do feel like something was happening with the app, and I do feel like certain types of accounts were getting targeted. And people want to say that, you know, if you're not growing on Instagram, it's because your content is bad. I don't fully believe that. I feel like that could be true, but I also feel like there's other things at play. So yeah, I started having trouble with Instagram. And again, like I keep saying, I just started feeling disconnected. So that was pretty much the bulk of 2022. I was still selling intention oils. I believe I started branching out into body oils and body butters, but either way, I was still going with the physical products. I had the little bracelets. I have a yin and yang necklace, and I just kept moving forward. So now we'll move to 2023. So once again, 2023 was very similar to 2022. I was still selling physical products. I was still doing personal readings. But I continued to feel disconnected for most of the year. I will say I feel like 2023 is when I feel like things kind of started to go up, but I still overall felt disconnected. And basically it would be towards the end of 2023, I remember November specifically, that's when I realized and was able to put into words like, oh, I regressed. I started going backwards. I started people pleasing again. And pretty much when I had that realization, that's when I started consciously basically getting myself back on track. And so that was pretty much all that happened in 2023. I feel like I was still overall inconsistent, in my opinion. When I say consistent, I guess I'm comparing to when I first started my page. So I was, posting every single day, multiple times a day. But when I started taking breaks back in like 2022 for like months at a time, that's what I mean when I talk about me feeling inconsistent. Like, so I would post for a couple months, disappear, post again, disappear. And I think 2023, it was like summertime where I had disappeared for a little bit. And then I remember specifically somebody commenting like, I miss you, come back. And that was a little nice exchange right there. And then I feel like soon after, I was already planning to come back, but soon after that, that's when I ended up coming back. And yeah, that pretty much completes like 2023. And again, towards the end, I started putting myself first again. I started correcting myself. So next will be 2024, and I feel like 2024 a lot kind of happened, and it was also significant. But just to actually backtrack a little bit, it was also towards the end of 2023 when I started noticing again the shift with Instagram. I started noticing that basically posting pictures is okay, but basically posting like text readings seemed to be the thing. Because basically when I first started Instagram, you could post pictures of your cards and you could get hundreds of likes and engagement and things like that. But as time has moved forward, Instagram has changed and it's just not the same. I feel like depending upon who you are, your account, you can still post pictures and get, a lot of likes, but it's really the carousels, it's really, the text readings that seem to, the text-based pictures, whatever. I'll see if I can like post a picture somewhere. It's really the carousels, the text-based readings that seem to get a lot of engagement, a lot of likes and things like that. I'm actually working on a guide that I will release that I'll be taking you through how I create my carousels, because I actually really enjoy it. Like, I'm honestly not somebody who likes to just hop on trends and things like that, but again, it's a pattern that I was starting to notice, and I'm just like, let me try it out for myself. And I was able to kind of figure that code out, and I feel like it actually has helped me. But we'll talk more about that as we get into like 2024. So next will be 2024. And 2024, I feel like overall was a better year. I feel like things started to kind of turn upwards, but that's because again, I realized that I had started regressing and I started correcting myself. Basically I continued on with, I feel like that's when I really started playing around with the carousel format, started tweaking things until I got it to how I really liked it. I think I was still posting like pictures of cards also. I'm trying to remember. I feel like 2024 is basically when I started shifting my content strategy. I started putting myself first. I was really starting to get like fed up with the personal readings, more fed up with the, emphasis on love. And so I consciously started to shift away from that. And then at this, I guess, the earlier part of 2024, that's when my guides, I feel like, started coming to me more heavily. But again, it was because I was doing a lot of clearing. And so when we get to March, that's when I started realizing, okay, they wanted me to start coaching. I was getting angel numbers that were leading me to other coaches, other people sharing their journey. And then I started having like, major takeaways like, oh, they led me here because what this person is saying, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be coaching and things like that. Also, I ended up having a dream where they pretty much told me that I had graduated. So it would take me basically another year to really understand what that meant. I feel like at the time I was already receiving messages about what it meant, but again, I needed to figure that out for myself. So yeah, I ended up having a dream that told me that I, graduated from the level I was at and it was time to start doing things differently, which again, I understood, but all the details still took me time to understand, if that makes sense. Like I understood on a general level, but on a more detailed level, it would take me about a year to really get that. So 2024, March, that's when I had the dream. I feel like summertime is when I started kind of channeling more without my cards. I also started trusting myself more, but again, I just feel like it's because of my journey. I started, basically loving myself more, putting myself first again. So yeah, I started channeling more, and then I would say it was August of that year, 2024, where I had a couple downloads about, a couple ebooks pretty much. So I think the first one was actually, I kind of remember this like it was yesterday. I had the download for my intention oil guide. I'll link it in the description because I quietly released it. But I had the download for the outline for my intention oil guide. I remember I was doing laundry and all of a sudden the outline just came to me, and I had to stop what I was doing and grab my little notebook and write it down so I wouldn't forget it. And it was actually posted on my board right here for the longest time, and then I guess completed it like last month or so. So if you're interested in wanting to know, how to make intention oils, it'll be linked in the description box. So that was like the first guide, and then the second guide or ebook was my Twin Flames ebook. And I feel like that was also kind of like divine timing, so to speak, because consciously it seemed a little too late almost, but it really wasn't, because again, I had so much going on, the download could not come to me until that point in time. So it was the perfect time, even though I was mentally moved on and detached from it. I received the download and then I created the ebook. I'm not really sure when I actually finished it, but that's something I also quietly released. I guess it was like late fall, winter when I quietly released it. And I don't know why I quietly released it. I mean, I think it was just because I was done talking about the content. I was done talking about the content, and I guess I didn't really see the point in launching it. But honestly, even if we fast forward a little bit, I'm no longer going to be launching things. I feel like if I'm going to be launching something, it's going to be like a course or something like that. But I'm no longer interested in launching because it just comes down to what I've learned about, masculine and feminine energy business models pretty much. So yeah, quietly released that. Again, had the download in summer. So the next thing would be in October. And in October, that's pretty much when I made the declaration that I was no longer going to be pulling cards for myself. Because at the time, I was no longer really pulling for myself to begin with. And I just got into a place, after loving myself, after changing my direction pretty much, I just got to a place where I just didn't feel like I needed them anymore. And, looking back, that was kind of the turning point for the next phase of my journey, because I feel like that pretty much blew the lid off my gifts and abilities kind of going to that next level. And then also the reason I didn't feel like I needed to anymore was because I had gotten personal readings, consistently up until that point. Probably a few a year, probably no more than 10 a year. I was getting personal readings and they all pretty much was telling me the same thing, which was that I was going to be successful. There was really nothing that a new reading could tell me that I didn't already know, if that makes sense. I wasn't learning anything new. So I'm like, okay, I'm basically being told every single time that I'm going to be successful. So I just got to keep going forward, keep following my intuition, and that's going to be that. So there's really just no need. And I think I said it, that just kind of blew the lid off my abilities kind of going to the next level. Because like I was saying, in summer, I was already starting to channel more. But then after October, I feel like me making that declaration pretty much showed the universe, you can handle more. We're going to start giving you more messages. And that's pretty much what happened. I think it was also October and November. That's when I kind of I've had this experience before, but it was also, I feel like one of the more significant, transmissions or channel messages that I received after I made that declaration. It was either before or after, but it was basically, some of you might remember if you watched my Instagram stories, but I was talking about how, you know, some people want love so badly, but they're not ready. I remember I was at the post office and it just kind of kept pinging down on my crown chakra, and I'm just like, I gotta share this now. And so that's what I did. That was like I feel like the first significant, you know, one of the first significant downloads that I got through my crown chakra, I feel like. And I actually went back because I thought I really didn't start channeling a lot of messages without my cards. Like I went back to see when I started channeling, and I've actually been channeling longer than I thought. Like when I went back to my page, I started posting more channel messages back in January, but I didn't think it was that far back because we're in 2025 now, right? So yeah, October, I decided I was no longer going to be reading for myself. Also kind of backtracking a little bit, in springtime, that's also when I decided to try out Instagram subscriptions and Patreon. Subscriptions didn't really last that long. Again, it comes down to the masculine and feminine business models. When it comes to subscriptions and Patreon, I've realized that you have to be you have to be in your masculine energy. You have to do pretty much whatever you can to keep people engaged. It's not for everybody, but I feel like with my particular, you know, genre or realm, it seemed like you have to do a lot to keep people engaged, and I'm not interested in that anymore. So, you know, it wasn't working out the way I wanted it to, so I got rid of Instagram subscriptions within like a few months. I kept going with Patreon, and the reason I started Patreon was because, again, I shifted my content and Instagram started shifting, and I just kind of felt like, you know, the engagement that I was getting on the love readings, it just really didn't make sense for me to keep posting them anymore. So I had been intuitively feeling guided to go to Patreon, so I decided to move those readings there. And so I continued with that, you know, through 2024. So I started Patreon 2024, continued on with that throughout the year. I was basically, again, sharing love readings. I did some single readings. I did some other one-off readings. And again, that continued on through 2024. In 2024, that's when I started getting like approached for different collabs. I did a few of those. I feel like that's when I started posting more reels of myself also in 2024. So yeah, 2024 was kind of significant. But if we go back again to December, so again, I had already, you know, decided I was going to no longer read for myself. In December, that's when I officially decided that I was going to stop doing personal readings in March of this year. So I made that decision. I also consciously decided that I was going to go in a different direction. I don't really want to say what that is yet, but I do feel like at some point we will talk about it. I just want to kind of get through more of it before I discuss it. And then in December was also when I channeled another outline. So I didn't mention this, but in 2021, I feel like that's when I first came up with the outline for my tarot ebook. But I'm somebody that, you know, I can start and stop things, like I mentioned with my website. So I started putting it together, but as quickly as I started, I dropped it. And I feel like really what was happening is just, you know, I was overwhelmed. Like I've learned that when it comes to certain things, I can't do them at the same time. So I feel like it was the fact that, you know, I was already in my wounded masculine, I was doing personal readings, and then to try to, you know, add educational content onto it, it just was too much. So I did not complete the ebook then. But what happened was my kids ended up leaving to go spend Christmas break with their dad pretty much. So that allowed me, I feel like, to have a lot of significant time to myself where I could hear myself. And then I ended up, you know, receiving the download for the outline. And I feel like I ended up completing it pretty quickly too. So that was like December 2024. And so now I moved to 2025. At the start of this year, 2025, I was still posting in my new like format, my new strategy. And I want to go back and say, and by summertime of 2024, I feel like that's when I really kind of stepped into this new strategy, stepped into this new format. I realized that, you know, I was getting a lot of engagement, a lot of growth just off of posting a couple times a week in this new way. So I just, you know, cut back on posting. And in hindsight, I'm grateful for that, because I feel like it kind of shifted me more towards a feminine business model, number one, but it also just allowed me to get more in touch with myself. And two, I'll also say basically it's just, I feel like I started to realize that when it comes to Instagram is not going to be what's going to help me. Like, expand my business pretty much. Like I can still use it for promotion, still use it for marketing, and like even though my business started there, it's not going to be the thing that honestly helps me grow at this point. And I just feel like it's just because of all the changes that they made. I feel like people are tired of being sold to, and I don't know, it's just kind of weird now on the platform, to be honest with you. But yeah, by summer 2024, that's when I really adopted the new strategy. And then also in 2024 in December, that's when I officially decided that I would retire from personal readings. Like I don't know if I said that. So that brings us back to January. So January I'm still posting. Also in January, that's when I held my first group ritual, which was an aura cleansing ritual. I had done, I feel like, a handful before with someone else. But by January, it was time for me to start doing things on my own. And I was intuitively guided to offer that. Now, when I got that nudge, though, I do feel like the rituals were successful. I was very happy with myself after I completed that. But with that, of course, I had the idea to continue that. And, I basically used my masculine logical mind to plan out group rituals for the rest of the year pretty much. But as with other things, because I honestly feel like when it comes to me retiring from tarot, I feel like that happened pretty quickly. Like I did not see that for myself, but I feel like my path, like straight up and down my chart, like even when I get messages from the universe, it's about teaching. So I guess, it makes sense, but I can't lie and say that I'm not a little bit disappointed, even though I'm burnt out from them. Like I feel like, in a perfect world, I would not be retired from them. But yeah, so when it comes to the group rituals, I evolved through those pretty quickly also. So I had an outline for one that I could do each month. I feel like I did the first few and those were fine, but I would say by March, April, I did feel like things were starting to kind of shift again. And I feel like honestly, a lot of my observations kind of goes into what's happening with energy work, which I did post a reel on Instagram about. But I started, feeling disconnected from those. And then it would be April where I wanted to have my Divine Feminine one. I was so excited for that. I was going to incorporate a live component for that, but I never even got to actually go through with offering that. Like I took the listing down and I stopped promoting it because the energy was just off. And at the same time we were having this, though, we also had the full moon in Libra, which I just kind of feel like, really kind of turned my world inside out, because I feel like that's when things just really kind of shifted for me. But yeah, it was that full moon. I feel like that kind of marked a change. And then I chose not to go through with offering it. But then it would be like another few weeks before I really understood like why that happened. And pretty much what happened with the full moon in Libra, was that my guides told me like, you are not allowed to offer services like this anymore. If you're going to be helping people, you're going to be teaching them to do it for themselves. You cannot do it for people. And so, when I understood that, it made sense. But before I understood it, I was definitely a little bit sad about it, because I was so excited. I had all these ideas of what I could do. And then just to learn that I had evolved through it, pretty quickly, I just, again, was upset about it. But I think it just kind of goes with everything else that I've kind of moved through pretty quickly. And again, the shifts that are happening when it comes to energy work overall. But yeah, there was something else that I was going to say there, but I forgot. So yeah. It was made clear to me that I was not supposed to be offering group rituals or services like that anymore. So I understood that, and I would go on to offer like one more ritual, which was the banishing group ritual, and then that was pretty much it as far as that goes. I want to say that I will still offer maybe some every now and then, but I feel like right now I'm really supposed to be focusing on teaching, and so that's what I'm trying to do. So yeah, I offered the group rituals for about 5 months, and yeah. I know that's what I was going to say too. It's just, I feel like I'm somebody that I move through things pretty quickly, and that doesn't make it easy for me, because like, again, I tend to do all this planning for it. But a lot of what I've learned too when it comes to our spiritual journeys is just that sometimes, we are intuitively guided towards something just to experience it. And although you might start having all these plans for it, when they tell you it's time to move on, you got to move on. So that's pretty much, what happened there. When I stopped doing the group rituals, that's when my intuition returned as far as giving me my next steps, which was to release my tarot reading ebook. And so I did that. And then, I honestly can't even remember when I released it. I feel like it's been a couple months now, but I released my tarot reading ebook. And then I've silently been working on and releasing a few other guides that are on my website, which will be in the description box. And again, I'm not interested in launching things anymore because I just feel like that's not the direction I want to go in, and it's not how my energy works. So if you want to check those out, again, they are available to you. But I've been working on different guides. And then again, I've also just been going in this new teaching direction. I feel like it's again been made clear to me that this is where I'm supposed to go. Over summer, as I've been releasing people, releasing habits, things like that, it became clear also that YouTube is supposed to be more of an educational space. So that's what we're going to get started with pretty soon. And then also, I feel like this summer was pretty significant. I feel like I didn't talk about it in the beginning, but with my spiritual awakening, that was actually a Kundalini rising. I feel like I had another Kundalini rising this summer, and it actually was initiated by me starting Twin Flame Scorpio's sister brand, which is aligned with Caitlin. I just feel like, honestly, the last weeks of July was pretty crazy for me. Like, a lot happened. But yeah, I ended up birthing or creating Align with Caitlin. And that actually makes sense in hindsight because earlier this year, I started working on something for the new brand, but it wasn't birthed yet. And so when I was creating it, I'm just like, I don't really want to put Twin Flame Scorpio on this. Like, it doesn't really make sense. But I really didn't understand it until I, had the awakening or the rising experience. So after I had the Kundalini rising, after I started aligning with Caitlin, then it made sense why I was feeling that disconnect. And I'm just like, so eventually, those things that I'm working on for that brand will come forward. So yeah, I came up with Align with Caitlin. I also started realizing that I've been transmitting messages. I realized my soul's origins, all of that, my soul's origins, transmissions. I'm going to cover that more on Align with Caitlin. So I'm not sure where I left off at this point, but I ended up having a Kundalini rising through coming up with Align with Caitlin. So that helped me make sense of why I didn't want certain things under Twin Flame Scorpio. I feel like the rising also led me to understand that I've been transmitting messages, who's been communicating through me, the soul group I'm attached to, I'm not sure how you say the archangel or the archangels. The one that I'm connected to, I realized who that is. I had a visitation experience, which was completely different than I thought would happen. I'll be talking about all that on Align with Caitlin. And I feel like that pretty much brings us to the current moment, actually. And so I would say as far as August 2025, I have more of a sense of direction now. I'm moving in that direction. And then also I feel like my strategy as far as, my social media is changing, which includes, honestly, just to be direct, me not really focusing so much on Instagram. But I do want to say that it probably will not even really feel like it, because basically when I do my content, I end up repurposing my content, and part of me repurposing content is also creating content for Instagram. But I guess where I'm at now is I have to decide if I'm going to keep making content for Instagram or just save myself time by not doing it. Like, it really doesn't take me long, but it's just something that I need to reflect on. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and then I'll see you guys in my next one.